Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. We are going to go a little bit deeper into Titleist's new T-Series irons. We've had a ton of requests for T200s, which have been pretty interesting so far in our testing, versus the T100S, which at the same loft as the T200s, but quite a different head design.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of people, Matty, making this decision over the next year, maybe even beyond that. Which one should you go with, considering they are the same loft, different head construction? Should you go with the the T100 that is now more closely associated to the T100, or the S that's associated with T100? You've obviously got the kind of wedge sole design that is in keeping with what Vokey obviously were doing with theirs with the contour. So you've got a little bit more of a sophisticated design with the 100S, but a bit more of a kind of techie design with the 200. But we talked about it earlier, we are seeing a lot of good players gravitate to these T200s.
It seems like there's less of the sort of game improvement drawbacks with these. Like, they look quite good at address. They don't have a ton of offset. They don't fly too hot, like the spin numbers are reasonable at the correct loft for you. So I think that's the thing. There's not really a reason for a lot of players who are pretty good ball strikers not to play them. But then the T100S is there, and so it gets a little bit confusing. Do you go with the more traditional one? And if you do, what are you gaining from doing that?
Absolutely, yeah, and I think people will be definitely curious about how this test goes and how much does the technology help and enhance versus how much does the feel and feedback. That's the big thing with T100 is just there's so much feedback from them.
True.
Maybe a little bit of that lost with the design of that T200, we'll see. But I think as a head-to-head test, this will be an interesting one.
Should be. So we're going to go pitching wedge, 7-iron, and 4-iron. Start with a wedge there.
Decent strike.
Nice.
You tug left.
Good. Ooh.
Yeah, different.
It's got some pop to it, doesn't it?
Definitely different. It does have some extra pop.
It's nice there.
Good.
Really good.
Fine, eh?
Yeah, those are good. Looks good there.
They are very different, Matty. I mean, I know the lofts are the same, but honestly, I'm struggling to compare them.
Yeah, because that's got a little more ball speed, a little less spin.
Yeah.
You flew it 4 or 5 yards further just on that first one. It's nice. That sounded good. It definitely got a few more yards of carry.
A couple more yards of pop.
It's awfully good there.
Yeah, it was
Striped.
good in flight, certainly.
It's nice too.
Pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, really good. It sounded really good.
Yeah, that was good.
There we go.
That was better. A bit better, that one.
That's flying nicely, yeah. There's no problem reaching. Even that, you faded that one a little bit and it's flowing the full distance. Swing there. Yeah, that's flying deep too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was, what was that, 219?
Yeah,
220?
Well, let's start in the wedges. So not a massive difference, kind of in the end flew within a yard of each other, but a little more ball speed, a little more launch, a little less spin on the T200. And you definitely had, one thing that was interesting is you seemed to be a little more consistent on the distance control with T100S. That T2 looked like when you pulled it, you didn't pull it by much, but you pulled it just a little bit, and you got one that flew about 142, 143, which is why that number there is a 3, and this number here is a 0.
Yeah.
So something to consider. I mean, they're both pretty good for distance control, but it wouldn't be shocking, I don't think, to anyone that you may find something more traditional like that T100S is better for distance control in a short iron. That's certainly the way that this looks, but a little bit more pop and a little bit more height overall out of the T2.
Yeah, a little bit tighter spin with the T100S. You know, again, you know, maybe being more of that wedge-specific design.
Yeah.
You know, you might find that that's a benefit, but not that either was bad. But if you're looking for little wins, you know, spin control is a nice little victory.
I would say definitely. And if you were making the combo set, as you kind of mentioned, you probably don't really need, this isn't giving you a whole lot more distance here anyway, so you might opt for the T100S here because it's flying about the same yardage but seems a bit more consistent.
I kind of felt that way the whole way through the test. That 100S was really good on standard deviation. Even down to the 4-iron, I think at the end it was kind of very consistently flying the same number.
Well, let's have a look at the mid-irons. Fairly similar story. The only thing that was a little different was the 7-iron actually came out a little lower in launch.
Yeah.
But it had more ball speed, couple miles an hour, and about 500 less RPMs. It did make a bigger difference here with the yardage. So now I can start to see how someone would hit that further. You actually hit that one, you just happened to fade 1 or 2 a little bit more, and it still was good for 6 or 7 yards.
Still good for a little bit more. A little bit of a different design kind of showing up there.
Yeah, definitely. So I think for the person wondering where maybe they might pick some yardage up, I would say somewhere around the 8 or the 7-iron, you'd probably start to see a big pop difference off those. And then into the 4-iron, I thought was quite interesting. You hit both really nicely. It just, again, you got a little bit of an extra horsepower kind of threshold here. It's not a ton, but a little bit more speed, a little bit more launch, a little bit less spin, a few extra yards. I would imagine you probably agree over the course of many rounds you'd find the T200 easier to hit.
I'm surprised they're as close as that. It didn't feel like that when I hit them. I know I think I put better swings than the T100S.
Fair, yeah.
And I think that's maybe why it's closer, but...
You did have one up at 139, I believe, with this.
Yeah.
And none of these got much over 136. So I can see maybe if you got a little bit more used to it. It's tough to switch between clubs like that.
Yeah.
But this is kind of, this reminds me more of like your Apex Pro that you have in the bag as your 4-iron kind of thing.
I mean, 218 is kind of the number that I had kind of in mind that one was good for carrying. So very similar to that, Matty. Yep. Good launch, really good launch actually.
It's a nice high ball flight on both of them.
No issue with the height on both of those. I just think most people would put that T200 down and be very comfortable, and some may not be as comfortable with the 100S.
I think that's fair. Yeah, when you start to get to that little loft, it can be a little bit. The T100S is a pretty compact head.
Yeah.
So if you just want a little bit more confidence, and I've been using the 4-iron of the T2 in my bag for a bit. Just the height that it comes out at on average versus my standard 4-iron, it's crazy. It's got to be 20, 30 feet different with the same kind of swing on it. So I think if you struggle to get the long irons up in the air, that might be the part of the bag where you add a couple long irons of that instead.
I mean, it is an interesting test to go through this different feel for both irons. Yeah, the couple of shots where I really felt the help on the T200 that I didn't feel anything on the T100S. Different handicap range for sure. I'll be curious how many of those T200 adopters stay there. Some of the people we were mentioning, whether they kind of go, over time, it's maybe not the fuel that I want. I think T200 is the one for the masses.
Definitely.
I really think that's the one that
A ton of people could
capture
fit into that.
A big portion of the golfing demographic. T100S, I think it's still for a specific player. I don't
Agreed.
think we won't be putting that in the hands of mid-handicap golfers, I wouldn't say.
No, probably
Still
10 and below, something like that.
Yeah. You need to be a pretty decent 10.
Yeah, and at that point you probably would combo them.
Yeah.
I think my sort of moral of this story would be, I think a really nice set would be 4 and 5 iron T200s, and maybe the rest in the T1s.
That'd be a nice set.
Because I think that's the point. For most people, the 5 and the 4 is where they really start to lose the performance of it.
Yeah.
But they're two quite different clubs, considering they're at the same loft and considering how many times people have asked us, which one for this type of player. I think you've got to go for your fit. They're going to perform pretty differently. I don't think you're going to find them all that close together. You had a couple of the clubs that weren't too far off, but in terms of how they felt, how the consistency of them was, it'll suit one person over the other for sure.
Yeah, and I think as that strike starts to stray around a little bit, you might see the separation, increase just a touch. The T200 protecting the miss a little bit more. So
Definitely.
The T200 has a little bit more in the locker for speed.
Definitely.
It definitely does. You can push that T200 out a little bit more. And it can also stop you from feeling like you have to push out the yardage a little bit.
That's a good point.
It kind of lets you swing within yourself a little bit, which
I've
I think is a
liked
good
that
thing.
with the long iron, as I feel like I haven't had to do anything to make the ball fly high with that. When I used to feel like because I hit my long irons low, I would need to sort of manufacture something. But with that one, you just kind of put a swing on it, it comes up in the air nicely.
I know. No, I think two great options. I think each of them deserve their place.
For sure.
I think maybe some people, when they looked at that, go, why have two irons that are the same loft configuration? There's a good reason why. They are quite different.
Yeah, plenty of difference there for sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, let us know, guys, which ones you've demoed. Be curious if anyone's bought these, what your handicap range is, kind of what your experience has been with them. Still two of the best irons of the year so far.
They look so good. I mean, that 100S, I have to say, when I put that 7 iron down, the 7 iron especially, I just went, that's a phenomenal looking iron.
It really is a great looking iron.
I love the satin. I think that that really has grown on me the more I see that.
Were you more of a chrome person prior?
Yeah, maybe kind of thinking when I first saw it that I wasn't sure, but the more I see it, it's gorgeous.
It's sharp, isn't it?
Yeah, really nice.
Absolutely. Okay, well, again, leave us your feedback on both those irons. Probably we'll see a little bit more testing with T100 and these kind of irons throughout the year.
We were talking about maybe doing some cross-manufacturer testing next, rather than in-brand testing.
Yeah, let us know if you want to see. A few people have said T200 versus P790 or P770.
70s or Apex Pros, maybe.
Apex Pros, so
something like that.
Throw that in the comments. We're happy to do a couple of those coming up, no problem.
I think that'd be a good little tester as people start to go for a fitting like this, a brand agnostic fit, rather than going to just a fitting centre. How do these compare, and what other irons, if you are looking at T200, what are the other ones that you should throw in the mix for your type of handicap or skill level?
Perfect. Okay, great. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.